design actually works with the technicians to really develop a product that really works. And there is one element that I really like, and we need to look to the bottom part of the bumper, and we see that compared to a normal car, it's slightly different, and we don't have a huge air intake in here. We have much more body color, and something really interesting is the way we work with the section of this element, having this kind of going all the way through line with this kind of section where we have this surface a little bit in the shadow, is facing a little bit down, and then we break it and we have this other surface facing up. It's actually creating a little tunnel, like a little way for the air to get conducted into this element here, which is called air curtain. This is a really important element, because literally what it will do is to get all the air that gets normally here trapped. It will go through this air curtain and then afterwards out through the wheel arch, making that all the turbulences from the wheel are getting really reduced thanks to the acceleration of this air that comes towards the corner of the car. This is actually not absolutely new in Audi, but it's definitive taken to the extreme in the Audi e-tron, because every single advantage in the aerodynamics is bringing range to our customers. The second point is actually related to our single frame, and of course the first thing we see is that we have this iconic shape, as we already seen in other SUVs of the brand like the Q8, and it's this octagon kind of shape, which it brings the status of SUV to this car, of course also in the front, but also the treatment of the materials. It tries to get rid of the feeling of the single frame being a hole to let the air go through the radiators, but more being part of the front. We will see later tonight how the color of the grille is actually not black anymore, but we have like a lighter color that is more integrated to the rest of the front. Also, the air gets in through in those areas, and actually it's something really interesting happening there, because we will have underneath we have a system with blades that open and close. When they are open, the air goes through to the radiators for the cooling of the batteries. When they are closed, they move down and they go directly out of the car towards the bottom part of the car, accelerates all the air, and it creates this ground effect that is so interesting in the car, really helping the aerodynamics. This was about the grille and the air curtain, but we have one third element that is really interesting. And for the very first time, we have these virtual side mirrors that they are based on cameras, but that for us as a designers is definitely a dream, because we have this really slim, thin element, like really sophisticated, perfectly connected to the aluminum part of the window, like a little, as I said, wing that is supposed to almost help also in the aerodynamics, because actually we need to think it reduces the drag coefficient quite a lot, but also it helps a lot in terms of aeroacoustics. So this element is an absolute technological highlight, and for us as a designer it's also a really a gift from our engineers. But how was it for you in the interior, Matthijs?
Yeah, if we talk about intelligence in the interior, let's start with the virtual side mirror. This is a world's first in this shape, and of course you can see here the mirrors on the side, on the exterior. I talked about the wraparound before, really connecting door to door the interior space together. And what you can see here, we found a very good place to integrate the displays where the virtual side mirrors need to sit in a very natural space, and they come with OLED technology, super sharp. But what you can see here, they are not an afterthought where we just put some displays inside of the interior, like a lost tablet. We really put that as an integrated part of the architecture. And you can see that the Audi wraparound, our typical Audi wraparound, has become intelligent. If we take a further look, I mentioned the cockpit architecture before. You can see here our black panel philosophy really comes into play into this area, and all the interaction that takes place is here in this part of the car. But also in the lower level, you know it probably from the A8 or A7, A6, we have a dual screen setup. with haptic feedback. It's really important to know. So those two screens are there. We have to lay out our flagship into the e-tron. But in general, I just want to point out that design is not about aesthetics only. It's really about bringing functionality and aesthetics together in a very good-looking and useful design. One of the elements here I would like to point out is this trim element in the door, connecting to an ergonomic, very good armrest that really stressed this SUV character of the interior. And also incorporating here a light band that's there for safety reasons as well. If your kids get out of the car in the rear, this light flashes up in the case of pedestrians or cyclists coming up. So really what you can see here is functionality and aesthetics coming together inside of the car. There are many, many other parts, and we'd like to talk to you tonight. Just some highlights. Talking about the third element.
Third element, which is actually really, really important in exterior, and is lightness. Because we are talking about SUV, but of course, we know volumes of SUV are really big. How to structure, how to make the sculpture of those SUVs is really important to have a proper volume on them. So again, I go back to this line that I commented before, that goes all the way through the car, from the front to the rear, again connected to the body side. This line, it really helps to split the car volume in two really clean levels. So we will have in the upper part this kind of angle. We see how the glass comes together with the rear shoulder and the pillar. Really interesting C-pillar, which has a really nice dynamic. And then in the bottom part, underneath the line, we have this kind of volume which is facing down. This helps us to create the feeling of this game between light and shadow. Like the way we split the volume of the car, catching a lot of light in the top part, and then a lot of shadow in the bottom part beneath the line.
Why do you call it a UFO line?
This is the UFO, and I will explain why. If we all go back to the 80s, 90s, in the cartoons, and they always sketch this funny UFO somehow, where it had like this angle in the upper part, and then it has this kind of shape, the little legs and little cupola there for the little alien. Of course, it really reminds in that way this UFO kind of effect, where we have this horizon line, and then we split the volume with this surface facing up and this one facing down. So that's why we call it a UFO somehow, just to, in a funny way, remind of this element.
So you create this Audi typical proportion with it, with the line 1/3, 2/3.
Exactly. This is what we see now here in the side, where we have still a classical Audi proportion. We have our glass, which is split, let's say, 1/3 of the volume is glass, and then 2/3 underneath are metal or body color. This is a classical Audi proportion. We will still find in the Audi e-tron, in combination, of course, once again with this stream quattro topic, with this movement down that we learned before. This is really important for the car to give this SUV character really dominance. And the second element that is really giving this SUV character is the part of the 1/3, 2/3 that is missing. Actually, is this extra element, is a splitting color, that it helps us to give this lightness to the car. Actually, what is really interesting, and if we see in the rear, we have this attractive graphic we will see afterwards in the interior. But here in the rocker panel, we have this kind of yin-yang kind of graphic. We want to give an emphasis to the batteries. We want to give an emphasis where the batteries are from, where the power is coming. That's why we have this little graphic here. And we have much more design elements than in many other cars in that area, because we really want to communicate this electrification in details like that.
So, Juan Carlos, when you walk up to the car, you clearly can see where the battery sits, and it has a very low point of gravity.
We will see it later in the official presentation, but it is exactly like that.
Well, if you talk about lightness inside of the interior, let's take a look. And when you get into the car, and hopefully you have the chance tonight, you can immediately see that this is an e-tron car, because the tunnel comes with a breakthrough and a very light design architecture here. I can do arrows as well. You can see you really can take a look through the tunnel. It's an open structure, but it's also there with a reason, because we have a nice hierarchy. Here's everything for driving and controlling the car and the HMI. And on the second floor, inside of this tunnel are cup holders, but also phone connection, etc. Everything sits there where you want it to sit. And it has a very nice aesthetic. This lightness theme also continues in the shifter. And here you can see that we really say the shifter has become digital, because only at the very end of it you change the direction of the car, be it reverse or forward. And the rest of it is really like a very lightweight sculpture, a flying wing, so to say, but it's there with a reason as well. Because if you sit inside of the car, that's where you have your hand rest. If you stretch out your finger, you really are in perfect reach with the touch display in the lower part. So you can see here again, design is not just aesthetics, it's also bringing you comfort inside of the car. One of the things we're really proud of, because you probably know that we started the virtual cockpit with the Audi TT, R8, A4, Q7, etc. But the virtual cockpit, we've taken it to the next level. Tonight you have to see it. It's really thin, and thanks to our engineers in Ingolstadt or in Germany, we were able to make a very clean and freestanding display. And you can see that the air vents left and right of it are going behind it, and it really creates this freestanding sensation. That's just a couple of highlights concerning lightness, but there's a fourth part of it, and that's what we call ceremony.
The ceremony. And we can see it really clear in the exterior when we talk about the lights. And first of all, we need to talk about the shape of the lights, which is a really iconic and a specific way of interpreting this electrification in the lights. And we have this movement down that gives us space actually to implement this e-tron signature that we will see now. We have this horizontal segmentation. We have this horizontal line in the upper part, and then we got those little segments here. It almost reminds me sometimes of a cooling of a computer with this kind of metal layering, right? These signatures will be animated. That's why we call it ceremony, because when the customer approaches the car and starts the car, you will get a little animation, welcome home, leaving home, that starts somehow saying, okay, now it comes the e-tron experience, so enjoy it. This comes also as well in the rear. We have this iconic kind of shape, also this movement down, and then all the way horizontal. And what we see really clear, that is really interesting in the rear light, we have this kind of light band, we have this element going all the way through, that is also supporting the previous topic that we see with the lightness, with this line that goes all the way through the car, is connected to this light band. And then we have still this e-tron signature that will be, of course, animated, giving, as I said, this kind of ceremony in the moment of entering the car.
Well, I can imagine that we have a lot of phone calls from people reporting there's a UFO on the street after the e-tron hits the market, right?
Absolutely. How is it for you in the interior, Matthijs, with the ceremony?
If we talk about interior, we also talk about orchestration, and orchestration is really designing for all the senses, not in the third dimension, but in the fourth. And why is that so important, especially in the e-tron car, in a full electric vehicle? When you enter the car, you really have to feel this car comes alive, and we're working with different senses. One of them is, of course, the welcome sound. When you enter the car, you have this Audi welcome sound. That's one aspect. The other one is the animation, and we put a lot of effort into the design and the little movements of our graphic user interface to really show that these functions come alive and you get a feedback as well at the same time. So we really design here to the pixel. The third part is light, because we want to create a car that you cannot only enjoy at daytime, but at nighttime you really have to get this sensation of space and lightness inside of the interior. So it comes here, back to this element, with very nice ambient light, and also accentuating here the breakthrough in the tunnel. We have ambient light in there, also to give you a good orientation for your phone to connect. That's one aspect. And the contour light here, as I mentioned before, but also here in the dashboard with a backlit e-tron badge. So you can see we're really designed in the 4th dimension, and so when you sit in the car, it really comes alive, and that's what we call about ceremony. Talking about ceremony, we're just a couple of ways ahead, and you probably want to get rid of this camouflage look tonight. Looking forward to it, I guess.
Actually, there's a camouflage that I really like because I find that the graphical approach of it is just has an extreme visual impact. But I think we've seen it long enough, and we all, I think, are expecting the great unveil tonight and to see what is underneath of this camouflage. And I hope we all enjoy the show tonight. Please come to us afterwards, and we can discuss for all the details for a little bit of time.
Just to wrap it up, we've given you a little bit of insight about the core values of the design of the e-tron. Here you see them: performance, intelligence, lightness, and ceremony. We hope it gives you a little bit of a guidance when you see the car. We're looking forward to have a talk with you tonight about all the details in the design, but here's the big picture for you. Thank you for your time and have a good night tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.